A new opinion poll is predicting the Conservatives are heading for an electoral wipeout, which would see the Tories retain just 169 seats, give Sir Keir Starmer a 120-seat majority.
Defence Secretary Grant Shapps is among 11 cabinet ministers forecast to lose their seats. And he joins us now. Did this give you a chill this morning, Mr Shapps?
Morning. I thought I was coming on to talk about the Houthis and our support to Ukraine, but I'll start with this. We're working, having made a bunch of very difficult decisions because of, not least, COVID and the war in Europe, against a plan which is starting to deliver. And we've seen unemployment remain very low, inflation falling very, very rapidly, the economy starting to grow. And this month, for somebody on the average salary, 450 quid back through the national insurance cut. So we're working to a plan, and people ask the question in a poll and not thinking that there's not an election tomorrow. So I think we just need to wait and see what happens as we work through that plan. They'll have a choice between continuing to make progress or going back to square one. I don't think Keir Starmer's got a plan at all. I haven't heard it. I don't think they know what they would do.
The trouble is...
Mr Shapps, apologies. Michael Portillo, me, we're both members of the club, cabinet and shadow cabinet members who lost their seats. I mean, are you potentially about to join it?
Well, I should say, actually, I fought this actual seat, my Welwyn-Hatfield constituency, the first time I fought it, and did not win it. So I entirely accept that you always have to fight for your seat. But it should be pointed out in the poll you're mentioning, it wasn't actually done in my constituency. It's done across the country and then projected. And as I say, when people have had, I think, several months to get the benefits of not just, for example, the tax cuts that come in this month, the £450, let's say, for the average salary, but actually, I hope more in the future, we'll have to see, and the benefits of a growing economy. And they compare that plan working under the Conservatives with no plan at all and going back to square one under Keir Starmer. I think that will force a rather different decision to be made. But as I say, I was rather hoping to talk about making a major speech today on the defence of this country. That is what I'm really focused on in what are pretty dangerous times. I'm hoping we can discuss that too.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we will in a couple of minutes. The trouble is, it's been the highest tax burden for decades for people. Inflation has eroded people's spending power. And, you know, they've had higher interest rates on their loans and mortgages. Cost of living crisis, energy bills have been extortionate in some people's view and punishing. And also, we've had this issue over the weekend. You know, one of your pledges is to stop the boats. Tragically, 5 people died over the weekend as the boat crossings begin again. So the weather's got slightly less cold, but clearly still fatal for those 5. You're just not cutting through, are you? You know, you do face electoral wipeout. No matter what you want to talk about, people don't feel better off and they don't feel the 5 pledges are working.
Look, people are pretty sensible on the whole, and they understand this country went through a pandemic that we've not seen for 100 years plus and costs the country a fortune, £400 billion probably. A war in Ukraine, one of the things I was hoping we were going to talk about, because we're helping to support our Ukrainian friends because it matters back home. But again, that will have cost us all. You know, somewhere along the line, these things need to be paid for. It makes us all poorer when those things happen. So, of course, it's been difficult. But, you know, it's easy for an opposition. Keir Starmer stands at the sidelines. He snipes from the sidelines. He doesn't have a plan at all. You know, I think he would take us right back to square one, just when our plan is starting to deliver. Now, I agree, people won't have felt the full benefits of that. It's only this month that £450 average cut in tax for national insurance is coming in. We've only been able to do that because we followed the plan. So it will take time for people to feel that. The election isn't now, tomorrow. But all of the things you mentioned, interestingly, are connected. Our security with the war in Europe. The boats, the small boats, you know, you're saying, yes, of course, we haven't solved that problem. And it's heartbreaking to see people dying in the Channel. But you know what? We've cut it 36% this year. So we've seen over a third reduction in the number of small boats because we've got a plan. What is Keir Starmer's plan? He hasn't got one for the small boats. So he would take us back to square one, and at least we are starting to make progress on these things.
OK, well, he would say, sorry, I just want to say, he would say his plan is to tackle the criminal gangs so that you don't have
do you
gangs
think we're not
launching
doing
boats.
that already? I mean,
it's not true to say he hasn't got a plan.
Well, look, we're already doing that. We're already tackling the criminals. He's not prepared to go further. He's voted against every single measure that we've taken, which, as I say, has already slashed the number of crossings by 36%. He's voted against every single one of them. So really, he doesn't have a plan. He takes the easy option. He snipes from the sidelines. And in the end, actually, I hope that people will see that we will have made significant progress in each of these different areas.
Mr. Shapps, let's talk about defence and your plan. Because we've talked about this before. When you were a candidate for the leadership of the Conservative Party just over a year ago, you said defence spending should rise to 3% of GDP, that we weren't spending enough. Since then, we've got involved in not just supporting conflict in Ukraine, we're now involved actively in conflict in the Middle East. The threats are rising. You were right, weren't you, to say that defence spending should go to 3% of GDP. Are you ducking it by not telling the Prime Minister that he's getting it wrong?
No, not at all. And actually, you'll, I hope, get to see my speech later. It's at Lancaster House. It's about this being a much more dangerous world. And as I say in that speech, we are committed as a government, when time allows, to get us to 2.5%. Now, that's a big uplift from about 2% that we were previously spending. So we're in the right direction. I never said 3%. We should do 3%. No, but the 3% was over many, many years. It wasn't a tomorrow thing.
So have you backed off that?
So I was going to say, so that will be for future manifestos. But as I say, I'm delighted that I'm the Defence Secretary who's now brought defence spending over £50 billion. We've seen why in Europe with Ukraine, why in the Red Sea with international shipping, why it's so important that we have these capabilities. And I absolutely stick to the idea. In fact, my entire speech today is about the idea. We are living in a much more dangerous time. It's not just the difficult people like Putin, the states like Russia who are dangerous now, or Iran. It's also the non-state actors, so Hamas or the Houthis and many others. So we do need to have our wits about us, and we are increasing our defence expenditure, which I'm very proud to see, and this government is doing a lot to secure.
All right, Grant Shapps, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Just while you were talking about defence, which obviously Grant Shapps wanted to focus on, he kept mentioning that national insurance cut. The wealth management company Quilter says despite the national insurance cut, a worker on an average salary will be just £2.68 a week better off than they would have been due to the freezing of tax thresholds. And more lower paid people are being dragged into the basic rate of income tax. Just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Fact check that. That's according to the wealth management company